Almost a decade after George W. Bush removed North Korea from the list of state sponsors of terrorism, Donald Trump is putting it back on, an announcement he made at a cabinet meeting late this morning.
Should have happened a long time ago, should have happened years ago. This designation will impose further sanctions and penalties on North Korea and related persons and supports our maximum pressure campaign to isolate the murderous regime.
Trump also used today's meeting to talk about the economy and promised big things ahead of those tax cuts.
We're going to give the American people a huge tax cut for Christmas. Hopefully that will be a great, big, beautiful Christmas present.
But while Trump is trying to talk taxes, the Weinstein effect is spreading through Washington like wildfire. First, it was the usual party versus party fighting and finger-pointing in response to a slew of sexual harassment and assault accusations against politicians. But now a few brave souls are starting to break from the pack and call out their own. Here's a recent exchange about Bill Clinton and the Monica Lewinsky scandal between New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, a Democrat who took over Hillary Clinton's seat, and a New York Times reporter.
Is it your view that President Clinton should have stepped down at that time, given the allegations?
Yes, I think that is the appropriate response. But I think things have changed today, and I think under those circumstances, there should be a very different reaction.
That there amounts to shots fired in a Democratic Party that so far has viewed the Clintons as almost untouchable. And on the Republican side, outgoing Senator Jeff Flake of Arizona was caught on a hot mic, warning of a dire future for his party if it keeps heading in the current direction.
Come the party of Roy Moore and Donald Trump. We are toast.
So we'll either be able to mitigate the fallout and prevent the toast. Here's the Trump strategy so far.
Your thoughts on Roy Moore, Mr. President? Do you believe his accusers? Do you believe Roy Moore's accusers, Mr. President?
Thank you very much.
Maybe you didn't hear the question. Joining me with a few more answers than that, I hope, are Diane Hessan, chair of C-SPACE and a former Clinton volunteer, has been doing ongoing research on Clinton and Trump supporters. She also has a regular column in the Globe. Good to see you, Diane. Jim Rappaport, director of the New Boston Fund and former head of the Massachusetts Republican Party. Jim, it's good to see you, too. Let's start with you. You heard what Flake said. Trump and Moore could bring down the party. Let's take Trump out of the equation. Moore alone, if he continues to run, and maybe even win, but continues to run, what's the damage and how fixable is it?
Well, I actually would start with back in the 1980s, the Republicans drummed Senator Packwood out of the party and ultimately out of the Senate.
From Oregon.
Chasing
women around
exactly,
his desk, yeah.
And stupidly writing them in his journal.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, of course, the Democrats did nothing about Kennedy and Dodd and their known shenanigans. I don't
want to mention some other Democrats before you respond to the question about Roy Moore?
He's going to bring it right
I'm going to bring it right back.
Franken.
How about Roy Moore?
I think that any senator who is, including Franken, who undertakes this kind of behavior should be tossed out.
Are you equating Roy Moore going after a 14-year-old potentially without
apparently
Franken
under
doing what he's doing?
MSNBC, supposedly last night she changed her story. But the fact that this guy in his 30s, 40 years ago, was going after women in his teens is disturbing and not something that I'm prepared to defend.
But very clear, are you worried about are you worried about the impact on your party if he just sticks around and maybe even wins and potentially gets expelled from the Senate, or no?
No, for the simple reason it didn't hurt the Democrats that what Clinton did in the White House in the 90s.
Are Trump voters, I mean, you're a student of all these people, which I love. Are Trump voters waiting to take their lead from their guy? I mean, you saw Donald Trump there. That was almost Saturday Night Live-esque, just sitting there with his arms full. Are they waiting to see what they should think about Roy Moore?
Well, what Trump voters feel that, what Trump supporters think that Trump is doing is staying focused on the most important issues, which is tax reform. So let Alabama figure out what's going to happen with Roy Moore. Now, Alabama, Trump voters have a really interesting perspective because they know the guy, they've known the guy
He's been around for 30 years. He's been running with statewide.
Yeah. I mean, when I talk to people who are really involved in Republican politics in Alabama, what they say is, look, the most important thing here is holding on to our Republican seat in the Senate. It is more important than anything, including morals.
Even if a pedophile holds on to the seat.
Well, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, how do we think about this? What are the options? Option one is we kick them out and we write in somebody else, or we bring in another candidate. Yeah. If that happens, chances are the worst possible case.
Or the governor could move the election couple of months.
But she has said she doesn't want to do it. But
she has so far said she doesn't want to do that.
Somebody else, not just Alabama voters, thinks the exact same way. Here's Kellyanne Conway on Fox and Friends. Listen to what she has to say for the rationale for keeping Roy Moore in the race.
Doug Jones in Alabama, folks, don't be fooled. He'll be a vote against tax cuts.
So vote Roy Moore?
I'm telling you that we want the votes in the Senate to get this tax bill through.
You know,
I would actually prefer them to get the tax bill through this year, so that you don't even need his vote.
Well, this year he's going to be elected, and
the
election will be in a couple of weeks.
January.
But let me just get back to this for a minute. I feel almost foolish that why isn't Trump? I've been saying to myself, saying something here. His kid Ivanka came out and said something, and the assumption is that she wouldn't say something.
Well, remember, he supported his opponent in the primary.
I understand, Luther Strange, but getting back to this for a second. Mm-hmm. It is all about the vote. He lost Ron Johnson in Wisconsin. If he loses two more, he's in deep you-know-what, because Vice President Pence can't rescue him. So they need a Republican vote. Is that really what it's all about? That's what Kellyanne Conway seems to be saying.
That appears to be what she is saying.
Does that appall you to say? I mean, as important as the tax plan is, we'll talk about your feelings in a minute. Does that trouble you in any way, Jim Rappaport?
I have 7 sisters, and I'm not very fond of folks who harass women, period. And clearly what this gentleman did is, if it's true, is outrageous.
Can we switch sides? Yeah, we go ahead.
Well, what they're saying in the Alabama papers is, the plan. Here's the plan.
Yeah. Elect him, have
do what
him
you
quit.
can, get the guy in, and then have the United States Senate
expel him, and then the Republican governor
At which point you
appoints.
replace him, and Ivy says, here's our other Republican candidate. That would be an ideal situation.
Can we talk
but
about
it's up to the voters.
The problem
that's not ideal. Unfortunately, it's what the cards they're currently being dealt with.
Can we go to the other side of the aisle for a minute? As I think you were intimating, I don't know if you were. Actually.
I didn't intimate it.
A second charge against Al Franken today, which it seems to me drives the Democrats into even a deeper hole. It seemed to me as of yesterday, as long as you endorsed an ethics committee investigation, you were pretty much covered. Thank you very much for that, Jim. It's not enough anymore, is it, now that it's a second one? And the second one, he didn't rape her, but she contends that he put his hand on her behind in a photograph session. There's a point at which he's got to go, isn't there? Even if he's not as bad as Roy Moore, even if he isn't as bad as somebody else, you don't think so?
Well, here's the thing. Anything you say about anyone, from a Trump voter point of view, anything that you say about anybody is completely irrelevant.
I'm not talking about Trump voters.
The assaulter, the sexual assaulter in chief, and the first one of real relevance was Bill Clinton in their mind.
Well, can we stay on boil? Can we just stop there for a second? And Bill Clinton, it seems to me, with all this stuff about reckoning and that sort of thing with Bill Clinton, your most recent piece in the Globe talked about how on a whole bunch of issues, Trumpians and Clintonians agree. Here's one issue where they don't agree at all. Look at this poll where the numbers are, well, at least to me, relatively stunning. 6% of Donald Trump voters find accusations against him, sexual assault allegations, credible. This is a YouGov Huffington Post survey. 83% of Hillary Clinton voters find that credible. So I want to get back to the Democrats for a second. There's a point at which Al Franken becomes the same sort of weight that Jeff Flake thinks that Roy Moore is in the Republican Party, isn't it? Isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, all sides are using hypocrisy.
So why did you?
When a Republican does it, it's bad.
I would actually like to say it slightly differently than that. The good thing that is happening now is an abysmal behavior that has occurred over a long period of time where men have not treated women with respect. There is a comeuppance that is happening right now. But we need to have a standards where if somebody says something off color, that doesn't become the level of sexual harassment where people start going after
But Jim,
people.
with all due respect, that's like saying, can a guy say to a woman, by the way, Diane, I really like your sweater. It's a really attractive sweater.
Yeah.
Well,
everybody knows what you can say and what you can't do.
But I'm going to the next level. What I'm saying is that there is a very clear level which is completely and totally inappropriate and in many places in life should make you, not qualified, whether it's for the Senate or Congress. If you have groped a woman or abused a woman or raped a woman,
Diane,
you should not get out of jail free card.
So here's where I agree with you. I think we're about to see a very significant culture change, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, most people who I know who've been through situations like this have not said a thing. So it's just starting, and there will be sweeping changes in all of this.
Well,
but the
and it's
guidelines are not
universal.
clear.
Wait, but
Here's
it's
the big
universal.
guideline that's not clear.
What's that?
Have you admitted it or not? So Al Franken may or may not have done something as bad as what Roy Moore did, but Franken says, yes, I did.
Well, wait, there's another
and
Democrat.
Roy Moore says, I did not
Wait, there's
do
another
it.
Democrat. Let me play Jim Rappaport for you, and I happen to agree with him, who has not admitted it. It's Bill Clinton. And after Gillibrand said what she said, he should have resigned. Isn't every single Democrat who chooses to run for president down the line going to have to answer that question? Should Bill Clinton have resigned over Monica Lewinsky
what
and
if
this
they
whole
say
list?
yes now?
I'm
They
talking
didn't
to
say
Diane.
yes then.
Diane, how about it? Don't they have to answer that question?
I think they have to answer the question, but do you think that, I mean, has Kirsten Gillibrand said Donald Trump must resign based on that? I mean, we don't have the ground rules that you're talking about that say where are the decisions? Decision number one is the person going to be honest about it, or are they going to deny? And if the consequences of being honest are worse, as in removal from office, than the consequences of denying, then we have a big problem because the deniers get to stay in office. The liars get to stay in office.
For 1 second, but denial on another spectrum. You have to explain to me as a Republican how the Republicans believed that supporting a health care repeal and reform that had 70% approval was good for the party, and now how supporting a tax plan, what's the number on the tax plan? 52% oppose it, only 25% support it. Let's assume they get their votes. How does that help your party? How does that help the Republican Party when, by a 2-to-1 margin, the American people know it's a massive transfer of wealth to the rich?
First of all, it's not, and secondly,
it is.
Well, we can disagree on that. Listen, if they get it passed, it is going to dramatically help business. It's going to dramatically help jobs. It's not going to help necessarily in a state like Massachusetts, which already has high unemployment. It isn't going to help high tax states, which I frankly
all those
shouldn't.
corporations are rolling dough now. They're not investing in jobs. They're not passing the money into salary
rolling in
increases.
dough is mostly overseas, and the reason is because of our tax rate.
The Democrats are really hanging their hat on this one, that they think they can sink the Republican Party, if not on Roy Moore, on the tax plan. Do you agree with the strategy?
Well, you got to take a look at the tax plan, decide whether you like it.
2-to-1 people don't like it so far.
What the tax plan and the
Depends
health plan have in common is that the Republicans have this strategy of saying, if we can just get it through fast, we'll get props for having legislation passed, and nobody will have to read the bill. And that's okay because they all think that Nancy Pelosi, that's how the Democrats got Obamacare.
But they're reacting to it preliminarily, 52-25. They have some sense of who this helps.
By the way,
or they wouldn't oppose it.
Obamacare the numbers were worse, and they passed.
Well, we have one piece of good news. Since we ran out of time, we don't have to talk about the president saying those 3 UCLA basketball players should stay in China. In any case, Diane, nice to see you.
Nice to see you,
Jim, pleasure.
Great
Good
to see
you
you
both.
always.
Really appreciate it.